Many of you guys have heard me say it 100 times, but just to make it simple, especially for people who are fairly new, the 70% rule is basically you're going to take, and I also get better at this, is not saying acronyms and not forgetting what, not everybody knows what they mean. ARV stands for after repair value. So basically whatever you think you could sell a house for, whatever you think the comps in the area tell you can sell it for, that's your ARV. So the most simplest example I give you, if you find a house that you think is going to be worth $100,000 when it's fixed up, you multiply that by 70%. That gives you $70,000. You deduct your repairs. So if in this example it was $20,000 in repairs, the most you would want to pay for it is $50,000. So if the most you could pay for it is $50,000, you put $20,000 into it, your all-in costs are $70,000. That's giving you, again, this 30% margin up to $100,000. But like he said, oftentimes when we're selling, title insurance and real estate fee and all the other closing costs that go into it, I have found closing cost concessions. Oftentimes sellers or buyers will ask for closing cost concessions. It typically comes in about 10%. And so with that 10%, we're making 20, so on 20%, and so on a $100,000 house, I'm going to average about a $20,000 profit. So on this one, I would typically, on a $200,000 house, I would typically, if all things went well and I had operated on the 70% rule, I would expect to make about 40. If we run the numbers back on this one, if he thinks he could get 220, and I don't think you thought that going in, right? What numbers did you run going in? 200? So if they thought they could get 200, then you 200 times 70 is 140. Deduct out your repairs of 55 or 60, and he'd be around the 80 or 85 price he paid. 220 kind of gives you a little bit more buffer as well. Again, they went over budget. It's not going to fit exactly. You want to fit the 70% rule exactly going in. Coming out, sometimes the story doesn't always end up that way. But again, if you did going in, and again, this goes back to what he said about they started out at 105. Imagine if you hadn't renegotiated. Imagine if you hadn't had the guy come back and do the inspection. Now we're looking at a deal where they're going to be lucky to get anything and probably walking out of this with a loss. And so that's why, you know, when he saw the other repairs, he knew, I have to renegotiate this to keep it close to, maybe he's not thinking 70% rule, but keep it close to where these numbers are going to make sense. And you really have to stay pretty rigid on that. And sometimes, because there are hidden costs, and if you use our spreadsheet or our PDF that's on the website, you're going to have a tough time missing anything because it's all spelled out there. So it's all the things you would need to repair, things that you wouldn't even think of, like doorknobs and stuff people don't think of, like new hardware and stuff that can add up to be almost $1,000 to go through the house. Trim, did you pay attention? You're going to have to replace the trim. So all that stuff is there, and then it also has the formula on the back that says, here's our sales price, here's our closing costs, here's our holding costs. You know, some people don't think I got to pay utilities for 6 or 8 months. I mean, that can add up to another $1,000, and so you got to really pay attention to those things. Otherwise, it's kind of like the PITI thing. It's like, well, my loan is $500 and I can rent it for $700, so I'm going to make $200 a month. No, you're not, right? And so it's the same way as I can buy it for $60, put $20 in it, sell it for $100, I'm going to make $20. No, you're not going to make anywhere close to that. So running your numbers, doing math, and I'm always terrified about telling people what an important thing that is, because I watch how people live their lives with their budgets and how, 30–40% of the people run out of money before their next paycheck. They're not real good at math, and so just understand one of your best skill sets in this business is going to make sure you understand math and that you run those numbers. We give you all the formulas, follow them, because if you don't, especially again, so as you get more advanced in the business, and maybe as you've done 10 or 20 or 30 renovations, you may fudge on those numbers because either you got a great contractor that's dialed in, or you're getting up in a little bit higher price range. For any of you guys that know Tom Wire, one of our investors, has been around for quite a while with us. He goes into the 300, 350, 400 price range, and he doesn't stick right on the 70% rule. He might fudge on that a little bit because the numbers are so much bigger. Tom has deep pockets. It would come as no surprise to people. He's building a new construction apartment complex with 50-something units that he's gone out and got a multi-million-dollar loan on. So Tom's not hurting for money, and so he can take some of those risks. So when you're brand new, don't take those risks, right? You can have one fatal deal that completely derails you, and then you become one of those people that runs around and tells everybody how real estate doesn't work. And I don't need any more people running around telling people how real estate doesn't work, because you're wrong. It works, you didn't work, right? So I want to make sure that we don't have any more of those evangelists running around telling the false story about real estate because they made bad mistakes and didn't do math. So that's a critical component.